Hi, everybody, and welcome to our ambassador briefing for August. We are lucky to be joined by Julie Spears, who is a mental health professional who has lots of experience in the kidney community. So she will share her insight and then answer questions from all of you. And then after Julie speaks, I'll give a little bit of an intro on our advocacy efforts and take any questions we might have from the crowd. So without further ado, I'll introduce Julie to everybody. So Julie, thanks a lot for taking the time to join us today. Julie, you're muted. Still muted.
Well, hello, thank you so much.
Well, thanks you. Thanks a lot for taking the time to join us today. And just thought if you could just give sort of a little bit of a more thorough intro as to your experience in the kidney community and just sort of some of the more common issues that people might face as they are dealing with whatever they have. And then I will take questions from folks in the chat as well.
Sounds good. Sounds perfect. So thank you guys for the chance to just come and share a little bit about just kidneys and grief and the overall mental health of that. So you know where I'm coming from, because I think that's the big thing when I was thinking about what all I could say. One of the things is, well, Julie, you say all these things, but how do you even relate? And so my background is I had a kidney removed 2002, started working in the dialysis industry, and later on in 2002, and was basically told by somebody like, you can't make a difference. And I was like, I am going to, just because I could see the lack of education that I had, and then working with these patients, on the floor in the dialysis clinic, and then having just traumatic experiences through my life that impacted me, that brought on large amounts of grief, and seeing how my everyday lifestyle impacted me as a person. So that's kind of a little bit about the journey, and there's so much more that could be shared. But I think what I have learned is that grief and kidneys, they go hand in hand together. And exploring different things that happen in our life and I don't know where each of you are as a patient advocate, whether you're somebody that's lived it, you're in the, have had a transplant. I think it's probably from all over, but we all have these journeys where we deal with a situation, but yet to see it in somebody else's, we can understand it, but we're not wearing those shoes. And so I think that these two things combined have not always been looked at with kidney disease, or talked about maybe with kidney disease. And they go hand in hand with our entire body. So just thinking about how these journeys come together and understanding how grief impacts the entire body is really kind of my mission now. And I think it's a way to kind of bridge the gap with education too. So I think that grief is like shaking up the whole body, and it's very quick changes that bruise in the body, and it affects our hormones. It affects our blood pressure. It affects how we live our day-to-day life, like how we communicate, how we share things with our family. And all of those things play a role in our kidney disease, really, right? I mean, if you think about it. And I think that's something that often we miss is, in all my years of education, this is so sad, but I would say, hey, here's you an hour of education. Well, I told you what to do, but an hour of education of learning how to eat and learning how to take care of yourself is extremely overwhelming, and it's impossible. So I think through my grief journey, one of the things that I really found out is you being the patient advocate there, listening, saying, yes, we get this. Yes, you're valid. And I'm not saying that you're not doing those things already, of course, but I think that's really huge for just kind of lowering what's going on. And Ben, you can kind of gauge me if I'm going wrong or going right. But I think that kind of even like how we impact our sleep, or I feel like a lot of patients when they're going through this, and I consider it the grief journey, it's like, what do I do next and how do I get up? And we don't know where all of these resources are throughout the clinics, and we kind of get lost in our education process. And so I think that's where kind of the storm comes along. So getting to some of your questions, or some of the questions, one of them was, should people talk to somebody? Should they have a mental health counselor or go through counseling? I think it kind of depends on the person. It's never hurtful, though, to have somebody to talk to, because that can be like a coach or a guide for us to kind of help us along the journey, to kind of share our feelings. Of course, we all know that. But I think it has to be the right person, because it can cause a deeper depression, right? Like if you set somebody up with somebody who's not familiar with kidney disease and they're just encouraging you along, well, they can't comprehend and really understand that from a certain level of where that patient stands. So I think really paying attention to that. If they have depression and mental health issues, then absolutely that may be the person to them. But I think just bringing an awareness to that is an important thing. And then I think the other thing is knowing when to get the help, knowing when to seek the guidance from a grief arena. Is we don't pay attention to the tension in our bodies enough. And I think that's even important for the patients to understand. Is it can be something as simple as saying drink, 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 or you need to talk to somebody. And I think bringing awareness that those voices and those things that we hear are very important when it comes to kidney disease, because a lot of times we kind of tell, in my opinion, and through the education, sometimes we already know, we just need confirmation that it's right. And being that patient advocate, I think, is huge, because you're kind of like ensuring, because when we talk about it, we're able to answer some of our own questions. And so I think that's part of what makes the patient advocate part a little, amazing piece to it. From dealing with family and friends and like the transplant part and them not understanding, I think of it kind of like a family vacation. If you went on this huge family vacation, not everybody is going to have as much fun as you, no matter how much time you put into it and everything that you planned. Somebody's not going to have fun. The expectations are not going to be there. I mean, there is a chance that it's going to be great. But I think that to prepare for that in advance, there has to be no expectations, and knowing people for where they are, and that is a journey for them. And this is your journey. It's where you are, and sharing the information from yourself to other people, and building a message that is from your heart that you can share to any and everybody, I think is really a strong impact here. Because in this patient advocacy side, we find that the people who could be a recipient or could be a donor, they don't always have the facts. They don't always understand. So the more that we share organically to churches, families, friends, and other people, and even reach out in doors that have been shut or keep knocking, I think that's where they're going to start seeing the change. But there's a lot that could be talked about that, but I think no expectations is really a thing from an advocacy side to implant in the beginning, so that you're starting that in the beginning of their journey. We want everybody to talk to somebody, but we don't know what the outcome is going to be on the other side. So I can't wait to see what you guys say about that, and if it resonates a little bit, because I think maybe setting up for the bummers, not in a way that is bummy, but in a way that empowers them to branch out into other opportunities, could be a thing.
Yeah,
and
so
getting education.
Yeah, one question we got submitted early, and for folks who haven't submitted questions early, you can submit them in the chat. And I'll also say real quick, I see a lot of names that I don't recognize from earlier briefings we've had. So if this is your first time, please just put in the chat, or you can put a direct message to me how you heard about the chat or why you're in it today. But the first question we had is, do you think people should see a mental health professional right when they begin dialysis or beginning the transplant process, because of how stressful everything can be?
Yeah, and I think that's up to the patient, and I do think it's wise, because there can be a coach to guide you on the journey.
Mm-hmm. And what are some sort of signs or symptoms that folks should be on the lookout for to realize that maybe their mental health is not where they might like it to be?
I would pay attention to those, to your attention.
Yeah.
I think that as they start thinking about it, if if they see that there are differences in their sleeping pattern or different things like that, then yes.
And I know in the past, folks have said one thing that sort of made dialysis difficult at first was seeing, and I don't know the proper way to say it, but the different levels of healthiness from everyone else in the clinic. So people sort of go in thinking everyone's going to sort of be where they are. And then they are, I guess, a little sad that they see people who are doing way better than they are. And they're like, why am I not at that level? Or they see people who are doing way worse than they are. And they sort of see that as, for lack of a better term, a warning sign.
Mm-hmm. I think this is a common thing, especially when you look at like getting off the machine early. Why am I on here 2 hours and 10 minutes and they want me to stay on for 3 or whatever? But I think that's education early in the beginning and explaining that the longer you're on treatment, what that does for the body, what getting off does for the body. And I think also talking about non-compliance is huge. So again, I think putting those hard things out there, even to the point to where it's, it sets up the stage for how you direct your health care with your actions is really going to be the catalyst to how you're going to slow progression or avoid hospitalizations and things like that, and even depression and even grief and even anxiety.
And one thing we've heard from lots of folks who are either looking for a kidney themselves or helping a loved one look for one is sort of surprise at who will get tested and surprise at who will not get tested. And how can folks manage that when maybe friends and family that they would have been sure would definitely, jump at the chance to get tested, don't do so. And flip side, random people on Facebook that you might have been in kindergarten with are like, sure, I'll go ahead and give you a kidney. How can folks sort of manage the yo-yo of that?
Expect it. And I think, again, just say, okay, how do I step out of that box of what should happen and see what can happen? What if I went to the news and we shared the story? Or what if instead of expecting our family to be a donor, ask them to help us and to understand our story? How can we reframe it so it's not putting somebody on the spot? And that's because there's fears of the unknown for them too.
And another question we got submitted early is, how can people learn to manage sort of all the bumps in the road post-transplant where you're not on dialysis anymore, but you're not fully back to a regular life either?
Repeat that one more time.
So how can folks manage sort of the bumps in the road post-transplant where you're not on dialysis anymore, but you're also not fully back at your pre-kidney disease life yet either?
I think that the healing process can be I can say it from dark grief, not from experience. But when you think about, I think about when you are in those moments, there has to be a healing and a resting process for the body to recover. It's been through a traumatic situation. And I think that the healing is very powerful, and maybe redirecting how they can spend that time and prepare for those things that are going to, because we don't know. If we knew, we could better prepare and redirect it, right? Sure. So I think just finding ways to redirect that time, to make that time be purposeful, whether it's, planning your new life, how you stand now, just those things can be really impactful.
And for folks who have been on dialysis for a long time or look like they will be on dialysis for a long time, how can they best manage sort of the highs and lows that come with it?
I think you have to sit in the lows, because I think when you carry the weight for so long, it becomes a burst. And so, it's okay to cry. It's okay to feel sad. But I think when you're on the highs and you're in those moments, and that quality time is to find it and to really enjoy it and to use that energy to pull you through those lows and to pull you back up. I think that, we can say, well, what about this or what about that? And every single person has a this or a that can pull them back down.
Sure.
And it's easy for people to say, don't focus on that. Well, it's your life. You're going to focus on it. But I think to be able to look at some things, and it takes time. So I'm not saying it's easier said than done. I understand that. But looking at some things of gratitude and where we are, dealing with where we are, can be very big. And then I think also, like I said, finding what brings you happiness and joy.
And one question we have here in the chat is, how can you talk to your family about life post-transplantation? Because this person says a lot of family members sort of look at transplant as a cure and sort of just think everything's going to be perfect immediately, when that isn't necessarily the reality.
And in that way with everything, because you think about that with so many things as they can't see. And I think that's where shifting the conversation a little bit could be impactful, and that is sharing the journey. And if they don't want to hear, you think of it about with a lot of things. It's not just the transplant. And so I think about finding a new avenue and finding somebody who will listen, because that's where you're going to gain momentum. And the beauty of that is other people are going to start seeing that and catch on. And sometimes it's really just asking your mind and coming up with a plan that says, okay, what is it that I can do and how can I make that happen? But I tell you, when you do one thing that's outside of, well, why won't they? And they turn it around, it can change their opinion.
Another question here from the chat is, how do we utilize the dialysis/transplant social workers for mental health help, or who can help with referrals?
I think that's a big can of worms. And I think that there's a lot of issues that are involved there. But I think in order to be a change in the transition that we need in just kidney care, value-based care, in every stance, I say be a voice, how you can, where you can. And because I think that's really where the catalyst is going to be, is being that voice to say, hey, we need these changes. There's a lot going there. That is a big can of worms. So voice your opinion where it matters, I guess, is the right way to say that.
But I think you are unique in being a mental health professional that has experience in the kidney community. So is there a way people can find folks like you? Is there sort of a clearinghouse where you can find mental health professionals on your own, or do most social workers know of folks that they can refer people to?
I wish that was the case. There are a few people that I have met who offer mental health resources in the dialysis community. And maybe that's something that I can try to say. I don't know too many, unfortunately.
But so outside of folks with the kidney experience, so is that something you should ask the social workers, or is that something you should check with your insurance providers as to who maybe
I think you should ask your social workers and your insurance providers.
Okay, and I've got some more questions here. Oh, well, comment here says the word needs to be spread by both dialysis and transplant centers about their support groups and sharing stories and hearing that every patient is different. With in your experience, are the support groups, are they good for patients, or is it sort of not one size fits all, and everyone sort of has their own thing that works for them?
I'm being put on the spot. I have not. I think that support groups are a little bit different, and I think that how they are ran can be different and unique per the group. So some support groups are very beneficial because they bring positive and they bring hope, encouragement, tools, and resources. But then I also think that you have the support groups where you continue to talk about the same problem, and there's not going to be any resolve because it is what it is. I mean, if you have a high potassium and you're upset because you can't get on the transplant list, let's focus on the potassium. So I think there's a lot of different kinds of support groups for, you just have to find the right one, and they are out there.
And is that something the dialysis social workers can or do provide, or is that something folks just need to Google and find their own?
I think that I would ask your dialysis social worker, and if you're an advocate, maybe even ask the facility administrator, and if you're even an advocate for that, ask the regional director if that's something that you would like in your clinic, because it is definitely something that I know that they would want to implement, but sometimes capacity may be a boundary there, but your voice could put something in motion, possibly.
And with everyone sort of moving to Zoom and stuff since COVID, have you heard of more support groups and stuff being online? Is that something that sort of more accessible for folks? I see Harry nodding yes there in the video, but don't know if folks can just, if they don't necessarily see one in, hypothetically in Silver Spring, Maryland, should they look for just an online one so they can join?
Yes. And I think that when it comes to kidney disease, when you're actually getting real value information, I think there's a couple of things with that. I think it's really can be really good, but I think that you also have to listen to it and say, okay, does that apply to me specifically? And so when you get into these groups, they can talk about some really sad, really hard things that they may not pertain to you at this time. So don't borrow trouble. And I think that's part of it too, is the right group has to be a benefit. So if you need to go to a group that's in a different state or wherever, then go. I know that there are states like Florida that welcome people to their support groups. So I think that's a good thing, is don't feel bad if you jump around to find the right fit. You should.
I will say we have a comment here from Lori in California that says, be careful of online support groups with misinformation and snake oil sales. So I will certainly echo what Lori says and say, if you are looking into these online support groups that maybe you find on your own and are not recommended by your dialysis social worker, that definitely to be cognizant of that. So we have another question here. It says, I've noticed that my anxiety has increased after my transplant. It's been 5 years now. I believe it's from the immunosuppressive medicine. How can I get better without changing medicine?
That I think you would probably have to talk more in depth with a healthcare provider, because there's probably a lot more. But I think that just thinking about it and working with a coach, there's potentially coaches or even all the resources that you have collectively, and coming up with a plan within yourself to getting, to where you want to be, is congratulations for that. And I think you can find you a team and with resources.
I can't speak to the person who put the comment, but we have heard from folks in the past that they certainly have higher anxiety post-transplant because they think, this got me off of dialysis, so I can't do anything that could possibly mess up the transplant or, get me back there. So I think that is one source of anxiety for folks. So maybe there's something to be said for managing expectations for what post-transplant life can look like. Right now we are out of questions from the chat. So if you have any questions that you've been sitting on, please feel free to put them in. I know Leigh Ann Saylor, no need to turn on video, but you did say you could talk a little bit about your support group. So I welcome the opportunity to have you speak, but you can just do audio.
I apologize for my need for just audio today, but
No problem.
I'm way behind on cleaning myself up with a shower. So I just wanted to some of you all are familiar with me. I founded Mulligan's Living Kidney Donors 12 years ago when my husband received a living donor transplant. We have grown into a little bit of everything. I like to call myself a patient advocate. I will do anything I can. If I don't know what to do to make somebody get their answers or feel better, I have a plethora of people that we've helped over 300 people get a transplant. However, we have a lot of people that come to our meetings. Sometimes we have up to 80 people in there. Usually they're more like 20, but I've got experts in that room that can answer a question to just about anything. Some of y'all know I was able to avoid dialysis with my husband, so I don't know much about that, but I got people in the room that are experts. But everybody in our room knows exactly what it feels like to be walking this walk and have had experience with it. But I am firmly committed to being positive in those meetings. People that walk in there need hope. They don't need to hear the desperate, nothing but negative. However, we do share the bad things and we give them ways to get through it. No, none of us are licensed psychologists or psychiatrists. The social workers from the dialysis centers reach out to me all the time. They want to help. They just don't, they're overwhelmed with what they do. They really can't go into the deep help that anybody does, but I will give you personal. My husband and I were the kind of people that were totally against psychiatrists, psychologists. I shouldn't say against, but we didn't think we needed it. As soon as we started seeing somebody and sharing somebody with somebody on the outside that was able to help us through this, it got better. I can't explain why, but you can't do this by yourself.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
So I will, let me check here really quick because we lost Julie, but I think Julie is back now.
I'm back. Sorry about that. And
No
I don't
problem.
know who that was just talking, but you're right. You don't need to do this by yourself. It is a journey.
Yeah, that was Leigh Ann Saylor from Kentucky. And so she has a support group. So Leigh Ann, if you're still here, do your meetings have an online component or are they only in person?
Honestly, we tried that during COVID. It really, I don't know if it was the bad timing or whatever, but we didn't get any new patients during those meetings to where, somebody that's out there that needs the help, they didn't, chime in and participate. I don't know if that was because they didn't know about it or, they weren't sure what we were, but anyways, COVID time wasn't that great. We have looked into putting this online. We just have not really done it, been successful. My meetings are the second Sunday of every month in person. We've got people that drive to Louisville, Kentucky from Ohio, Tennessee, and Indiana, because sadly, there's nothing like this there that they know about. I've done a lot of investigating. I do need other people in other states to tell me where these support groups are, because I get people all over the United States that call me. But as far as online, I'm up to suggestions as to how to try to get that started.
Oh, thank you.
Don't stop. And I would say keep going, because there are people looking, and the more.
Hello?
Sorry, Julie,
Oh,
you got muted again. Did we lose Julie?
No, I'm here. So
Okay.
I had to get back on my computer. We had a power outage. Anyway, the more that you push with consistency, the more they're going to see it. So I would say if you have the desire to do that, you're already, that is huge. So I think just consistency is going to be the key, and don't stop. Keep sharing your little message. Talk to them as if it was you. And that'll even help you gain some.
That's what I do. I feel like they identify with me because I did walk through hell 12 years ago, and we've had a positive outcome with my husband. I do I've just 12 years ago, I didn't have a clue what I was doing. I knew I had to help other people. I put one foot in front of the other. I have just kept out. I've now got relationships with all the media here in Louisville. If I have a big story, not that anybody's story is bigger than anybody else's, but as you all know, some catch more attention. I'm currently helping Bob Baffert's groom get a kidney. How that happened, I don't know, but it's just word of mouth. And I have been persistent and I've kept going, and you keep doing it. People will pay attention to what you're doing and what your cause. I've got senators down in the state of Kentucky that are so behind my cause. I can call them and they will help me get a bill passed in no time. It's just, you got to stay out there. You got to keep doing it.
Yeah.
All right, I want to call on Stephanie Dixon. She has her hand virtually raised here.
Hi, thank you. The problem I have, I agree with everything you've said and what others have contributed to the group. But I know from my personal journey, 21 years, when I was diagnosed, I didn't hear a thing that people said or comprehend a thing that was said to me other than you could die. And that's all I concentrated on. So initially, people talk to you, they check the box. I've given this person these papers, they've signed the papers, etc. But there's no continuation of that. And that is where I see the problem. If they gave me papers or whatever I signed, I honestly don't remember. Did I read them? I don't remember reading them. And if I did, I wouldn't have been able to comprehend those papers. So to me, it's nice that people talk to you when you first start and, hi, welcome to the clinic, whatever. But you need to check back in with people after they've been dialyzed for at least a month, when their minds begin to clear and you come out of that dialysis fog or dialysis dementia, whatever you want to call it.
Mhm.
And basically, that's all I have to say.
Do
Thank
you have
you.
a support person that comes with you at all? Because that's why we always recommend have a support person that can kind of take in what you don't, because it's a lot.
When I started, yes, my daughter was there. She was 14 years old at the time. Currently today, and having been continuously on dialysis for 21 years, no, I go to and from the clinic solo. I don't have a problem understanding whatever is said to me. I am an advocate in my clinic and up and down the Eastern Seaboard. So no, I don't require assistance. I spend my time mostly helping other people. I do contribute to other support groups, and I go not necessarily for myself, but to offer information from a patient's perspective as to how my journey has been or what they can do or to whom they can speak to address whatever particular issues they're having.
Stephanie, I think that what you are saying is a very common known concern. And part of the reason is because of the crasher rate of patients that come in, meaning they were not expecting or they were not educated. And then when they do wind up on treatment or dialysis, they're so uremic or in a spot where they're unable to comprehend or remember, and such shock and such grief and so many other things that are going on there. So I think that is a common thing that happens. And I think that what happens from there, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, is it goes through the overwhelm of, I don't understand. They're telling me things I still don't understand. I don't know what to do. How do I get up? How do I make the change? How do I make the steps? And I think those were the things that I was talking about in the beginning, where finding those education points before that person needs them or get to that and getting the family support, community support is really vital. But I think you hit the nail on the head. There's not brain capacity to even understand what they're telling you at that point in time when you're starting.
I agree. Thank you. And that's what has driven me to join other groups and become an educated, informed patient and be able to pass that information along. At my clinic, I'm the resource liaison because I belong to so many different committees, and we develop so many resources for patients. It is a way to funnel that information into the community.
Amazing.
Thank you, Stephanie. Any other questions from the group? You can post them in the chat. You can ask. Raise your hand virtually. Last call. Harry, I see your hand is up virtually.
Yeah, I just wanted to know, Stephanie, are you not eligible for a transplant? Is that why you dialyzed for 21 years?
I personally don't want a transplant. That's why.
Okay,
It's my life choice.
all right, that's fine, not a problem. I'm just asking.
No, I understand. And we all have, you select the treatment modality. My opinion is, I know that statistically transplant is better or the best outcome or the longest lived outcome for patients. However, my personal belief is the best option for anyone is the one that you are going to commit to and do. So whether you're a transplant home or in center, if you don't take your medication on transplant, you lose your transplant. If you don't do your dialysis at home, you'll be back in center or you'll be in the hospital And the same thing for in-center. If you don't do the treatment as prescribed, follow the diet. I mean, of course, we're all
Absolutely.
Mhm. Yep.
And I talk to a lot of different patients. I'm also a patient advocate for a bunch of
human.
communities.
You can choose with it. Excuse me?
I'm a
Please do.
patient advocate for a bunch of communities, and I talk to a bunch of different people every day, help them through the process pre and post transplant, and try to answer their questions about dialysis. Although I was never dialyzed, I was lucky enough to get my kidney and a pancreas a little over 7 years ago now, without having to do dialysis. But I've learned so much over the years, talking to my doctors and to other patients, to learn what's out there and what has to be done in order to keep that body going till you can either get a transplant or live a better life.
Exactly. It's up to each individual. And for me, dialysis works. I've been doing fine. I haven't been hospitalized in about 7 years.
Great.
And that was for parathyroidectomy, which is common kidney
Connected.
thing. And you know, I'm doing well. So I choose to stay on dialysis.
Good to hear. Absolutely.
Mhm.
You have to be comfortable with your choices, that's for sure. And I think that's part of your mental health aspect to it too. If you're not comfortable doing what they're telling you to do, you have to find another way to do it.
I
Sure.
want to elaborate on something that I've heard
Sure.
Stephanie say, and that is knowing yourself. And I think that was really huge. What I heard is that I know what I will or will not do. And I think that is something that, as a patient advocate, is to share. What you will or will not do will change the direction of your life. So you know your choices, and we can choose a right choice regardless what that is. But if you know that not taking your medications is going to impact you getting a transplant, or if you know that not doing certain things is going to impact your life, I think it redirects their train of thought. And so to know, to kind of know where you're going to have the best outcomes and make that choice is just really great. I hope that it's shared more with patients so they can make choices. I think that's the obvious, the part of this is educating them on the good and the bad of everything so that they're able to make their own choice fully.
Thank you. I see Kyle has his hand up. I was about to say I'm personally offended Kyle has not asked any questions yet because he usually has really good questions. So Kyle, I will accept your questions now.
Hey, thank you, Ben. Sorry, I'm driving. I'm just coming off of a program and driving home shortly before another assignment. Yeah, just want to drop in real quick for folks that may be in more remote areas or looking for online virtual support groups. There's some great groups on Facebook that we've been running for over a decade and a half now. Well moderated. We always direct medical questions back to the experts, whether they're dietitians or transplant nephrologists, surgeons, and also your regular nephrologists and practitioners to those folks. But online support groups from the peers, as well as some of those practicing dialysis nurses and practitioners in our group, acting as anonymous moderators for the most part. For folks on peritoneal dialysis, there's peritoneal dialysis support groups with close to 12,000 members from around the world, 85% over in the US. There's Home Dialysis Central discussion group that talks about various home dialysis modalities and also some general questions. And then chronic kidney disease support group. And then there's one last one that's kidney disease, dialysis, and transplant for those general sort of catch-all areas that are not modality specific. Those are some ones that are on there. We will moderate it. If you catch people not moderating well, please let me know, since I'm one of the admins and also moderating on those groups as well. But yeah, thank you so much for this topic on mental health and where we could get some of the resources as patient advocates as well. Appreciate it.
Sure. Thanks a lot, Kyle. Lori, I'll call on you now.
Hello, that's the first time I've ever raised my hand in a Zoom ever.
First time ever.
First, thank you for having this topic. It's great. I noticed last year, it had nothing to do with my transplant, but there were some family issues where I was feeling a lot of stress. I actually just looked at the back of my insurance card. I have a Medicare HMO, and they actually had a special number for mental health, which I called, and they got me into a great virtual therapist. She happened to be nearby, but they gave me a huge amount of choices. We just happened to hit it off. She was very helpful, as Julie said, basically a coach, and that helped me so much. I only saw her for a few months, but that's something that those of you who do have some sort of HMO, check the back of your card. You may never know that there's this little tiny phone number that says mental health, and it's not a suicide hotline. It is really there to just give you referrals, both virtually and in person.
It's really
Well,
good.
thank you.
And I think so many more places are coming up like that. So I would say whoever the patients are, encourage them to ask their social worker and their insurance companies, because a lot of the insurance companies are implementing programs like that as well.
Thank you.
I also think that especially as a non-medical professional, I can not diagnose, but see the people in my clinic that could obviously use someone to talk to. And those are generally the people that do not reach out to anyone, and they stay in their minds, their paranoia or negative reactions, whatever it is, and they continue in that for years. And even when professionals have suggested to them that they seek someone to talk to, they refuse.
Thank you, Stephanie. Anyone else have any questions?
Yes, I do.
Okay, go ahead, Stephen.
Yes, good afternoon, everyone. I'll try to be brief as possible. This is my first time joining this group. I'll give you a little bit quick background about my situation. I was diagnosed with chronic kidney disease early in the year. And I was doing home. I was training to do that. And they did it twice. And I had the catheter put in and it stopped working 2 times. And I decided not to have it done again because I kept going through the operations and things like that. And I had an issue with insurance at that time, which has been straightened out. But to be brief, my quick question is, sir, I don't feel like I had the proper support that I really needed. And that's bothered me a lot, even from the previous place where I used to work. The people really didn't think even enough for me to just to call and say, hey, we heard you're sick, how you doing? And that bothered me a lot too, but that's life. It's not, you can't change people. You may not like what they do, but that's just part of life. And so my quick question is, I'm trying to find some more, it's not some more, but some kind of group or support. I live in Virginia and right outside of the district. So it's not like I'm in a small little place, which, I'm sorry for people do, because I know sometimes the way you are, it depends on how much and the kind of assistance you may get. Sometimes people have to travel, great distance just to get things that they need, which is understandable. But in my situation, I just feel like I haven't really got the support that I really am seeking. This is all new to me, and I just feel, like I said, I had my good days and I had my bad days being diagnosed with this kidney disease in the early of the year, and it's just been a really battle. It's been a really uphill battle, and I would like to be more of an advocate, and so people won't have to experience what I have experienced, but I really don't know who to reach out to talk to about that either. But I had the hours a day. I go 3 times a week, Tuesday, Thursdays, and Saturdays. So, and I also want to know, does it make a difference where you go? I mean, and the reason why I'm asking that question, I'm with Rita right now, but there are other places that have that you can seek treatment too. So I was just wondering, I shouldn't say it like this, but there were like one place is better than another, or that's what I'm trying to say, basically. So if not, because I have a doctor and I have a social worker, but And maybe it had been because of the insurance factor that I wasn't insured at the time, but I am now. Maybe that played a bigger role in this whole process. I'm not gonna say maybe, obviously it did, or I wouldn't have this cancer still in my stomach that they haven't even taken out yet. So now that I have the insurance, they're telling me, well, we're gonna schedule to have that taken out. Okay, but having this in my system, in my stomach, for all these months, but not working, who's to say it have done some kind of damage?
You've got a house down the street from me where the family just moved out, period.
Sorry, I just muted someone. Yeah, so Stephen, I would suggest working with your dialysis social worker to see if they have any recommendations on mental health professionals that
Yeah.
you could work with on this.
Yeah, unfortunately, she's leaving too. So the person I was doing the training with, she left, moved to another state. Now the social worker's telling me she's moving to another state in September. So my luck hasn't been really the greatest with people.
Well,
But-
I mean, the person who replaces them, could just as easily know different providers in the area who would be able to help. So, it's possible placements wouldn't be so bad, but I would definitely suggest working with the mental health, the dialysis social worker, the current one, and whoever becomes the new one to get help there.
Okay, thank you. I would do that follow up with her.
Sure.
Thank you.
Eric, I'll call on you now. I see your hand is up.
Hello, I just had a question as to, I know there's been a lot of issues that we internalize around seeking behavioral health services. And I was just wondering, is there a greater uptake from people who get, who hear from their friends, family, and their networks that it's okay and cool and helpful to get behavioral health services? Or is it a greater uptake when people are just hearing it from their social workers and providers?
Are you meaning education from the family point of
Give me
view?
that.
Yes, I mean, I know it's best to get to, to find
Okay.
your, to find a provider, a behavioral health provider, it's always best to go
I'm on
to
a national kidney
your either
therapy
insurance
committee.
company or someone in the healthcare arena already, because they probably have some networks that they can guide you through. But in terms of getting people to actually use the services, is it easier or better has the uptake been better when people have gotten a supportive community around them in terms of their behavioral health? Or do you find that it's just when providers come to you and say, I think you're going to need this is a service that can be helpful for you? Has the kidney community been accepting and moving forward with that? Because I just know in healthcare writ large, it's been a challenge, and we're getting to the point of more people using behavioral health services, but it had been a stigma for years for people to utilize those kinds of services. And I was just wondering.
I see what you're saying now. That makes more sense. I do think you're right. And I think the way to combat that is through overall education, to say that the more support you have, the better, the more ears you have, the better, and to include family. One thing that seemed to be common is it's almost like a lot of people, either one, they don't want to tell their family because they don't want to be a burden, or two, when they do tell their family, they don't really know how to express it. And so they kind of fumble all over it and it becomes an awkward situation. Or they're just not getting like the feedback that they need. And so they just shut down. That person can help to share that information. But I think also involving the family as they can through like doctor visits and stuff like that will also help to encourage along with that support too, because they'll see the need and the value in it.
Thank you.
So I will thank Julie for her time, because we are almost at 4 o'clock when we end these calls. So Julie, thanks so much for taking the time to speak with us today and providing your insight to folks here in the group. I think we'll probably be addressing some more questions in the future in our Facebook group, but we're very appreciative of your expertise with us today. So thank you very much.
Thank you. And thank you for letting me come. I misunderstood. I thought it was more of a presentation style than conversation. So I appreciate y'all for bearing with me, and thank you for letting me join. Y'all have a good day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, and I'll
Have a
say,
great afternoon.
I'll say quickly to everyone before folks leave, I wanted to talk to everyone about our, I just put the link in the chat for our ACE Awards, the Community Engagement, Ambassador Community Engagement Awards. For those who don't know, that is our mini grant program where we will be awarding, I believe, up to $600. Click on the link to make sure those numbers are correct. But up to, I believe, $600 for programs led by ambassadors such as yourselves. So we have a handful of them this year, and we're hoping the program is really successful and we'll be able to expand it next year. So applications are open, so please, if you're interested, click on the link I just put in the chat to find out some more info about it. So does anybody have any questions about the ACE Awards program? I'm just considering Kyle and Stephanie's hands being up virtually as from before, but if either of you have any questions about the ACE Awards, feel free to ask.
When's the deadline, Ben?
Let me double check.
There's no deadline.
Oh, no deadline.
Now, I had a comment for Stephen Walker.
Mhm.
What changed for me, when I started my first 4 years of dialysis, I did PD at home, no problem. Everyone was nice, welcoming, educated us, et cetera, et cetera. But when I switched to in-center hemo, that's where all of the confusion and problems began. What straightened it out for me was joining with not only AKF, but with my local network. The United States is divided into 18 networks, and they're managed and run by ESRD, end-stage renal disease groups, and they've been appointed to the Center for Medicaid and Medicare Studies to oversee dialysis. So if you have a problem or question, to me, that's where you go if you can't get it at your clinic. And also, if you are not satisfied with your clinic, CMS also has a website called Dialysis Facility Compare, where you can check which clinic would be right for you. You can check how many chairs they have, what their hours are, what services they offer. Some of them have patient reviews, and this can be very helpful. Your clinic may be convenient to your home, or you just happen to land there. And if you're not happy, and you can explore other options, because generally a social worker is not willing to send you someplace else, because once they have you, you equal, or we all equal money to that clinic, and they are reluctant to let us go. So I would suggest you connect with your local ESRD network in Virginia, and also look on Dialysis Facility Compare to check out other clinics in your area that might be better, or more to your personal liking for whatever reason.
Thank you. Any other questions? We have 2 minutes left. If not, I will just let folks know to please check our Facebook group, because we are always posting new info, new opportunities there. If you have any questions in the future about the ACE Awards program or anything else, you can always email or call me, and I'll be glad to be of assistance any way I can. I think Jamie, I see your hand is up. I'll call on you to be the last person.
Hi, guys. So I did have a question. I did put one in the chat, but I
Sure.
want to start by saying that I believe that feelings are a measurement, right, of our mental health. And I don't think that they are honored as such, right? Because I think that when we start to speak about our feelings, I think sometimes we're disregarded, especially as, you know, patients or advocates or caregivers. And I think that a lot of people in our communities are desensitized to that. And so what I did put in the chat earlier, and I don't know if it was answered because I did agree with Mr. Kyle, because mental health affects so many of us, especially in the African-American community, and it is taboo to talk about our weaknesses and our struggles. What are some practical ways and suggestions on how we can talk to others about this? Because it is a very sensitive topic. And so that's something that I did want to talk about and had questions about.
That is not a question I am qualified to answer, but that is something we can certainly look into. The folks that do work with us, and I can see about getting an answer to you for that. And I do think this was a very interesting and well-attended session. So I think this would be well served to have another mental health session.
I agree.
Maybe do like a couple every year.
I agree with that. Thank you, Ben.
Sure, no problem.
Ben,